Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by CJ Vogel. Yeah, we're feeling the cheesiest. Texas gets a 41-27 win over Michigan in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. CJ, you're live in Orlando right now. Just wrapped up the postgame press conference with Sark. What's the vibe for the Longhorns as they started the calendar year with a bowl win, end the calendar year with a bowl win?
Yeah, a lot goes into, kind of the vibe and the energy and how much will this team really bring when it comes to a game like this, right? It's not the college football playoff. And in today's landscape of college football, you kind of wonder how much, it really means to a lot of players, right? You sit there and you talk about 20 guys opting out, only 65 make the trip for Texas. That was one of the bigger celebrations I've ever seen from a Texas football team. They loved that, and the players that got to see the field today, a lot of them hadn't seen a lot of time on the field, so it meant a lot more to them, obviously. And that was a very happy, you can even say that was a very cheesy team at the very end of it, obviously. That was low-hanging fruit for me there. But, Jeff, they celebrated that win very hard. That meant a lot to the team, and it was cool to see.
Feels like the young spirit of the team, because there's a lot of young guys left, a lot of veterans opted out, as you said, but a lot of the young guys around. And CJ, of all the things that I would have not predicted this year, if you'd asked me, hey, 2 Longhorns are going to rush for 100 or more yards in the same game, who are they going to be? I would not have picked Arch Manning and Christian Clark, but here we are. Arch ends it with the big 60-yard exclamation point. But Christian Clark, CJ, for a guy that didn't get much burn during the season, 105 yards on 20 carries, started with the big 22-yarder. I love the way he was patient. He pressed the hole. He got vertical, really showed a gear that, quite frankly, earlier in the season when he was still rehabbing that injury, he didn't have that gear early in the season that he showed tonight.
It was very encouraging seeing Christian Clark run the football. Off the bat, 22-yard rush, first carry of the game for him. You're sitting there saying, wait a minute, that looked pretty darn good, Jeff. But, all the way through, I thought he made decisive cuts. I thought he ran the ball very decisively, which for Christian Clark earlier in the season, it takes time as a running back at the college level for that game to come to you. And obviously, he looked like a different running back, I thought, than when we saw him in September earlier in the season. It also, I hate to say it, but it makes me wonder, could this running game have been different with Christian Clark more involved early in the year? I don't know. The offensive line obviously had its struggles throughout the season, but he looked good today. And I thought that there was some twitch to his game that, maybe I hadn't seen previously in his Texas career.
CJ, when you look at Arch Manning's game, 21 for 34, 221 and 2 touchdowns, could have been more had he not suffered from a couple drops, some critical drops in this game. But 155 yards on 9 carries, 2 touchdowns. I mentioned the 60-yard, got a walk-off. The 4th down scramble to set up his touchdown pass to Khalil Lockett. Us that follow the program, we've seen Arch be this guy pretty much from the midway point of the season on. It really started in the Oklahoma game, but then you saw it late in the Mississippi State game, CJ, and we've talked about the trajectory. He ends his redshirt sophomore season with the kind of production and the kind of performance that I think rivals the sky-high expectations he had coming into the year. He is that guy at this point.
Yeah, he absolutely is. And I sat there in the second half of the game and I said, hey, Texas probably going to need Arch in the last minute or two to have something together on the field, to put something on the field that wins this game. Ultimately, defense stood up. Ty Anthony Smith, 2 interceptions back-to-back. They stood up and made plays when they needed to. But I still sat there and said, hey, a number of times today, it really has felt like Arch has put this team on his back and just willed them down the field to put points on the board. And nothing obviously more evident than the 60-yard touchdown run, which looks very similar, Jeff, to that against Texas A&M. And hey, if that's what his calling card is going to be, is knockout blows towards the back end of games, I'm all in for that. But no, he definitely looked like he was the best player on the field tonight as well.
I'm glad you brought that up, elevating guys, because there was a point in this season where and I don't care who you're playing against, because we saw whether it was Kentucky or San Jose State, like we saw this offense struggle mightily at times. But if you'd have told me, hey, you're going to be in a game where you're starting without Trey Wisner and DeAndre Moore, they're not even here. And during the course of the game, you lose Emmett Mosley and Ryan Wingo. Oh, and you don't have CJ Baxter either. If you say, hey, you're without all those guys, I'd say that thing probably craters and you're really struggling to move the football. No, because to your point, CJ, Arch is at the stage of his development where he's elevating guys around him. He elevated Christian Clark. He elevated Khalil Lockett and put this team on his back.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, even then, there's still plenty of room for improvement. There were 2 throws early in the first quarter that kind of showed the first half of the season arch. And you sit there and say, okay, which arch are we going to get? I think is a question that has dissipated a bit towards the back end of the year, but you still kind of have that, okay, there's still moments. So the ceiling is still a ways away, which is very encouraging, knowing that, look, Jeff, if he's playing like this, Texas will have a chance in just about any game they play in 2026, regardless of who's on the other side.
Absolutely. Shout out to the offensive line real quick. This is the second game against a ranked opponent. Vanderbilt was the other one where Texas did not allow a sack. And again, Arch was really good against pressure. CJ, you look at the defense, there were times where it wasn't pretty. Bryce Underwood got a lot of easy completions at times. Michigan was 5 for 6 on 4th down, converted the first 5. And that was because, and you look, man, they had an average to go distance on 3rd down at 9.3 yards. They're 4 for 15 on 3rd down, but they were eating into that to go distance. They're setting themselves up for some short yardage 4th downs. But at the end of the day, when push came to shove, the offense got to the point where Michigan had to throw the football, and that's when you saw Ty Anthony Smith and Wardell Mack do their thing in the second half.
Look, we talked about it. You wanted Bryce Underwood to throw the football. You wanted him to throw the football down the field, and evidently 3 interceptions came off of that. But no, I thought Texas defensively, it was kind of twofold, right? It looked like a defense that was missing 7 starters, right? It just did. There were missed tackles, Michigan, I thought, did a fantastic job of misdirection in the backfield as well in their running schemes. It put a lot of stress on your linebackers, which was already very thin. But ultimately, it was one of those things where the talent was there, maybe the experience was not at times. And that, to me, was the situational football of, hey, it's 3rd and 15. They need 15 yards. Let's protect the sticks here. Well, the 14-yard completion is set up. Now it's 4th and 1. They convert. They put points on the board. And you're sitting there saying, okay, well, 2 or 3 more games under their belt. Maybe you get developed into a situationally a little bit more as well over the offseason. That's going to change. But all in all, I thought it was a commendable performance by the Texas defense, knowing how deep they had to go in their depth chart to get guys on the field.
Yeah, at some point, it almost doesn't matter what the numbers look like. Just get the job done, and they did that. And, CJ, that's kind of, as we wrap this up, it's kind of where I am with this game. Look, with all the opt-outs, the guys that you didn't have, the injuries during the game, look, it doesn't matter kind of how you do it. Just get the win, and at the end of the day, when the dust settles, even though, like you said, there was a lot of issues still on defense with being too leaky in coverage, special teams outside of Mason Shipley was a disaster at times. You had, with the offense, you had the one possession where you had a 1st and 10 at the Michigan 21. That drive ends in a punt in the first half. 12 penalties for 104 yards. Again, that's a disaster that's got to get fixed in the offseason. But, CJ, at the end of the day, all that said, when this team gets out of its own way long enough to put some stuff together, they look about as good as anybody in the country.
And again, that's kind of been the frustration of this season, is you see the talent all over the place. And it's, again, just the self-inflicted wounds that have, in my opinion, basically prevented this team from reaching its ceiling in 2025. But as we've seen time and time again, when there is an overwhelming narrative from one season's conclusion to the offseason, we've seen that more times than not be corrected, right? It was 3rd down defense for a little while. It was getting the quarterback on the ground after getting pressures, red zone offense. We've talked about it. That more times than not has been corrected. Now it's special teams and penalties, and that, to me, all just goes into discipline.
CJ, I know you had a heck of a time in Orlando this week during bowl week. Shout out to the Citrus Bowl for the hospitality. And hey, everybody that's participated in anything with On Texas Football, if you've been part of our watch-alongs, you watch our content, you're on the site, whatever it is, participate in our live streams, thank you so much for making this a really fun season. Not quite the season we'd hoped Texas would have, but anytime you end it with a bowl win, you get 10 wins. That's nothing to scoff at. And at the end of the day, CJ, I think I speak for Longhorn Nation when I say you're going into 2026 with a lot of promise. And you've got a legit franchise guy playing the most important position on the field, a guy that legitimately is going to enter 2026 with a claim to be the best player in the country.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know that we're gonna hear all about it when it comes to the Arch hype once again. This time, I think, especially towards the back end of the year, it's worth it, right? He's earned that hype. He's earned that media buildup, if you will. But it's going to be fun in 2026, and another year in the books, Jeff. This was a fun one.
Yep. Once again, thanks to the On Texas Football fan for your support. Thanks to all of our sponsors, everybody that was a part of our coverage this year. Thank you so much for this season. CJ, safe travels coming home, and thank you for the knowledge and expertise as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. For CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Once again, the final score in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl: Texas 41, Michigan 27. The Longhorns in the season at 10-3. And will Texas finish ranked higher than Oklahoma and Texas A&M in the AP poll? We shall see. We'll see how it works out. But for CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Happy New Year. And until next time, hook 'em.